President Trump is putting the pedal down, accelerating efforts to slash tens of thousands of federal jobs and expanding Elon Musk's power to make it happen. Musk arguing, quote, the people voted for major government reform, and that's what they're going to get. But today, we're learning some federal workers were fired based on his misleading claims, raising concerns after President Trump signed his latest executive order, pushing even more large-scale cuts to the government workforce. And even after the cuts, agencies can hire no more than one employee for every 4 employees that depart. But as the Washington Post points out, if the goal is to save money, eliminating 25% of federal employees would cut the overall budget by about 1%. At the same time, one union warned the move would decimate government services critical to the American public. Trump and Elon Musk argue they're rooting out corruption, but offered zero proof.
We do find it sort of rather odd that, there are quite a few people in the bureaucracy who have ostensibly a salary of a few $100,000, but somehow manage to accrue tens of millions of dollars in net worth.
We've already found billions of dollars, not like a little bit, billions, many billions of dollars. And when you get down to it, it's going to be probably close to $1 trillion. It could be close to $1 trillion that we're going to find.
I want to bring in Princeton University professor Eddie Glaude, and with me here in studio, New York Times reporter Jeremy Peters. Both are MSNBC contributors. I mean, first, Jeremy, the visual aspect of this. You have President Trump behind the Resolute desk, but this was a press availability dominated by Elon Musk. But let me ask you about the actual order that was signed, because it gives Musk's team the power to go into every single agency and determine who to hire and fire. So what's this going to look like going forward?
Well, I think it's very uncertain, right? Because the courts have shown a willingness to step in and block a number of these cuts so far and to curb some of President Trump's assumed authority. The devil is going to be in the details in a lot of these cuts, Chris, because, what we've often seen when it comes to Trump plans, especially as they relate to tariffs or, spending cuts of any time, is there are plenty of escape hatches that Republicans have built for themselves in here. Already you're seeing signs on Capitol Hill that Republicans are asking for special exemptions and considerations. This did happen with tariffs, where businesses could go before a commission and say, this is why I should not pay this tariff on a good from China. And there were a lot of businesses that managed to escape paying those tariffs. So, again, this is not the kind of broad, sweeping, across the board cut, I think, that Trump and Musk are trying to sell us on.
And Eddie, Elon Musk says he's being transparent, but he brushed off any conflict of interest concerns. And he and the president made all these claims about billions in fraud, offered no proof, just frankly, as Trump never provided any proof that the 2020 election was stolen, because it wasn't. I mean, do you think at some point the American people are going to say, we need you to justify what you're doing, especially if they start to feel it, if government services start to go away, or an awful lot of people know folks who work for the federal government who seem to be collateral damage in all of this?
I think that's absolutely right, Chris. I think at the moment when the tangible, material, concrete effects of these actions begin to impact people's lives, there are going to be some questions, some hard questions asked. I think there are 3 things that we need to keep in view. One is the constitutionality of all of this. And Jeremy alluded to it. This is in some ways an example of the overreach of executive power. Some of these agencies are statutorily mandated. So what is the special government employee who doesn't have to engage in financial disclosures? What does it mean that he has access to all of this data? That's the first thing. The second thing, of course, has to do with policy. What does it mean to destroy USAID and the human cost of that? What does it mean to freeze NIH and what it will have in terms of cancer research, in terms of how universities and colleges function? And then more importantly, you can talk about efficiency and the like. You're only getting 1% of the federal budget. What are the human costs? Think about folk who are taking care, who have raising families, who have mortgages, who are trying to pay for college. And what is happening here and for what purposes and what ends? These people have no concern about the very people that they're leaving on the cutting floor.
Yeah, Jeremy, some of the things they're saying are straight up false. I mean, there's that story about, $50 million, then it became $100 million worth of condoms being sent to Gaza. Yeah. Not true. And here's what Musk said when he was challenged on that.
Some of the things that I say will be incorrect and should be corrected. So nobody's going to bat 1,000. I mean, we will make mistakes, but we'll act quickly to correct any mistakes.
But in the meantime, what happens to the people, as Eddie points out, who I keep going back to this, but in the protests early on, there was a little kid holding a sign, my mom and dad both lost their jobs. Mm-hmm. People are getting fired left and right, or at least put on leave, right, left and right. What more do we know about the real world impact here?
Mm-hmm. Well, Eddie's exactly right that this has yet to shake out. And at the moment, the Democrats' best critique of what Musk and Trump are doing is that they are enriching themselves and their billionaire friends, that they are looking out for only the wealthiest Americans here by eliminating protections from the consumer, the CFPB, right? So, and government institutions like that are meant to protect people. Trump voters, though, have given him an extraordinary amount of leeway and, have an exceptionally high tolerance for chaos. And so I think when he says we are cutting this, we are making this more efficient, people will believe him until they start to see a diminishment of a service that they have come to rely on or some type of government benefit scaled back. So I think until you start to see that happening, there's probably going to be very little impact from this very true Democratic rebuttal that what Trump is doing here is not, in fact, looking out for the little guy.
Eddie, there's an op-ed in the New York Times that calls this whole thing a governmental soap opera. Tressie McMillan Cotton went on to say, in Musk, Trump has found something important for his stylistic approach to authoritarianism. Musk's fans love his narration of power as a vicarious game-like experience of dominance. He clarifies a scary world for them, putting it in terms they understand. Bad guy, good guy, evil, villain, kill, win. This is propaganda, but it is also a skilled manipulation of content in a content-saturated culture. Is it fair to say that the outcome of this debate won't be about what's happening to government or the Constitution or hardworking Americans, but who frames it in more easily digestible terms?
Yeah, that speaks volumes about who we are, Chris. Is that right? I mean, we're not dealing with the substance and of the impact of these policy choices or these actions, but rather how it's narratively framed. And, Americans love their melodrama. We want to see our enemies, our heroes be wholly virtuous, and our enemies or the villains to be completely sinister. And we know human beings are much more complex than that. What we do need to do, I think, is to begin to unpack. I know we can't do this at the level of politics, Chris, but we need to unpack the ideology driving this. There's greed, of course. There's grift, of course. But there's also this idea of deconstructing the administrative state, which reveals, that they don't have a real robust sense of the public good. What is the responsibility of government to ensure a certain standard of living for everyday ordinary Americans, to ensure that we are eating healthy food, to ensure that our children are vaccinated? And so they're deconstructing all of these elements, and you have to ask for what ends and for what purposes. That can't be answered with melodrama. It has to be answered with the complexity of actual human beings trying to take care of each other.